Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns and welcome back to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. And today we're going to do sort of an informal handicapping of what I believe is going to be a very exciting race for the Speaker of the House. Now, as many of you may know, the Speaker is chosen by the members of the House of Representatives. And the jockeying gets pretty intense in the elections that will be coming up, because there will be efforts made to procure the support of candidates who are running for office. We have honed in on one gentleman, and he is the one whom where we were allowed to vote, would get the final vote. Now let me just say this, we're going to look at 9 candidates who have at least expressed some interest or are rumored to be in contention for the speakership. One of the names I'll throw out, you may wonder, can you possibly be serious? But we're going ahead and doing the exhaustive list of the 9 that we have at least heard from, or have heard pretty strong indications that at least have considered tossing their name in the hat for the speakership. And those 9 would be, in no particular order: Representative Lance Harris, Representative Sherman Mack, Representative Clay Shakesnider, Representative Jack McFarland, Representative Paula Davis, Representative Alan Seaball, Representative Barry Ivy, Representative Stuart Bishop, and Representative Raymond Garafalo. All right, we took as our initial criteria for making the final selection, we believe that the next speaker, if you follow Sound Off Louisiana's blog, you will know we are about as strongly anti-tax, because we believe Louisiana state government is bloated, period. There's no need to elaborate upon it. And so sometime back we created a wall of excellence. We're going to give you a link for it. And we profiled the 20 members of the legislature who voted no every single time in last year's contentious sales tax renewal. So we believe that ought to be the first criteria. You ought to be on that wall, okay? And in using that criteria, all of a sudden the 9 dropped down to 4. Those 4 being Sherman Mack, Alan Seaball, Barry Ivy, and Raymond Garafalo. So, knocking out the initial 5 and focusing in on just the 4, many of the followers of this blog are folk that have been adversely impacted by occupational licensing. And that is something that most anyone knows is near and dear to my heart. And last year in the regular session, Senator John Milkovich sponsored a bill, and I realize many of you would say, John Milkovich? You've already heard Scott McKay refer to him as nuts or crazy, and he is pretty animated, and I won't go any further, but at any rate, he sponsored a bill to give occupational licensees, at that time, one fundamental right. In this most recent legislature, he followed it up with what I think is an outstanding bill, a full Bill of Rights, all right? But last year's bill merely said that you would have, if you were an occupational licensee, you would have the option of having an administrative hearing. Now, for those of you not knowing what an administrative hearing is, that's what they go through to try to take disciplinary action against your license, okay? You would have the right to have it heard by an impartial body, specifically the Division of Administrative Law, as opposed to the body that was comprised of practitioners who had awarded the license. Now, if there's a compelling case that the licensee has done wrongdoing, that shouldn't cause any fear or trepidation, okay? Because you would think that the Division of Administrative Law would find them in violation, just as the board would. But the reality is, you have certain boards and commissions, and the Dental Board and the Auctioneers Board are 2 of the most prime examples out there, known to man, that are doing nothing but, they have a historical propensity to do nothing but eliminate competition and serve as patsies for elevating some favored ones. And I'm not going to go elaborate on it, because at this point, if there are folk out there that are in the dark with regard to those particular boards, and especially if a legislator wants to try to say he or she is in the dark, then I don't know that there's any help for you, because it has become too rampantly knowledge, okay? And so I made a statement, upon the there was an amendment, that was put in by Representative Mascarello. He wanted to remove the auctioneers. As a former auctioneer, there wasn't any way it's absurd, okay? Now, fortunately, his amendment went down in flames, because there are too many members of the legislature who are keenly aware of the problematic nature of the Auctioneers Licensing Board. Thank God. And I would hope I would have had a small role in that education. But at any rate, his amendment went down in flames, and so auctioneers stayed in. And when it came time for the final vote on the bill, I had said then I was going to save as a JPEG that vote, and I keep it on my phone at all times. This is the final vote in the House for Senator Milkovich's bill. And I said then that I could never support a candidate who voted no, and I highlighted the Republican no's, okay? They're highlighted. So let's see how many get eliminated from the 4 that remain based on that. Well, I don't see Representative Garafalo's name on here. I don't see Representative Ivey's name on here. I don't see Representative Seaball's name on here. But I sure do see Representative Sherman Mack's name on here. Therefore, there's no way I could support Sherman Mack for being the next speaker. And I want to say one other thing, and we'll give you the link for it. Sherman Mack was more than willing to go up and sponsor a bill to try to increase the licensing fee for cosmetologists. We're going to give you the link for it, okay? And if you watch the video, it's clear he hadn't got the slightest clue how to handle some of the questions. All right? And it didn't even take a vote to go do this. The executive director of that board and the the chairman, the two of them just sashayed right on in there and sought to have this little increase. It didn't work out. But the very fact that Sherman Mack could go in and sponsor this bill, the last thing the cosmetology board needs, these are the folks who adamantly oppose something so fundamental as hair braiding without a license. And Sherman Mack went and sponsored a bill to get them an increase in the licensing fee. Now, not to be outdone, since Stuart Bishop, who's already been eliminated through the first round of our criteria, let me throw in that the 2 years prior to that, Stuart Bishop stepped up to the plate and sponsored the bill to increase the licensing fee for cosmetologists. I'm just pointing out a few reasons as to why some who fell off the list, in my firm opinion, and that of Sound Off Louisiana, have no business being the next speaker, okay? All right, so we're now down to 3. And those 3 being Representative Raymond Garafalo, Representative Barry Ivey, and Representative Alan Seaball. Now, let's focus in for just a moment on the lowest hanging fruit of the 3, and that would be Representative Barry Ivey. Now, most would figure that he has no shot. However, our sources have told us that if Governor Edwards prevails in his re-election, one of the first moves he's going to make is picking up the phone to call Barry Ivey and push for him to be speaker, and he can line up a ton of Democratic votes, and in all likelihood, Barry Ivey will be the next speaker if Governor Edwards is reelected. And let me just say this, Barry Ivey assisted greatly in this bill that I referred to earlier on the occupational licensing. He afforded me the opportunity to speak you know, on the problematic nature of the Auctioneers Licensing Board. And I think Barry Ivy is a very nice guy, for number one. And number two, I think he is sincere in his convictions, and you have to admire that. Unfortunately, he did make a couple of major goofs, one of which, and I know he doesn't view this as all that bad, but I'm just telling you, the anti-tax sentiment is so strong. Many of you will recall, had he voted the other way in committee, the gasoline tax some years back wouldn't have made it out there onto the floor. So that was one hit. The other one was when he said publicly, and I don't even remember which measure it was, but that Republicans didn't want John Bell Edwards to get a win on something. And those type of conversations that are held in the privacy of a caucus, they ought to stay that way. So those are the two major things that I think would cause Ivy. He would be unelectable except for this scenario that I've just explained with Edwards prevailing. So while I'm certainly very appreciative of Barry Ivy, and I have respect for him and especially of his convictions, and I genuinely appreciate the opportunity he afforded me. And let me just say one other thing. He also proposed pension reform this past year. Now, he took one more incredible lambasting from that, but he is right. The present model is unsustainable, and we'll have a video to further substantiate that in coming days. But I admire him in that regard. I do think that his close alliance with Representative Stokes, who clearly saw the handwriting on the wall and chose not to seek re-election after the disastrous performance that she saw in the most recent Secretary of State's race. So Ivy would fall off. I mean, he's listed obviously, but the scenario under which he prevails is an Edwards re-election, and under that scenario, we got pretty good information that he will be the go-to guy. That Edwards is like him. Who wouldn't, if you're going to leak out stuff the way Julie Stokes clearly did, and Ivy to make that sort of a statement that again it should have stayed within the caucus. That's the whole purpose of having those type of discussions, not to go out there and blab. I'm not saying what Ivy said isn't true, that it was said in there, but that's where it should have stayed, okay? And so I'll end it at that, because it's difficult for me to say a lot of negative stuff on Representative Ivy when he's got the conviction, when he's got the type reform that would be needed in terms of pensions, and when he obviously has a grasp on the problematic nature of occupational licensing boards. It's difficult to point out someone's weaknesses, but if you're going to be objective and fair, you pretty much have to, and that's what I've tried to do. So we are down to now Alan Seaball and Raymond Garafalo. And look, anybody who is, if you look on that wall of excellence, you're going to see the taxpayer hero profile of Alan Seaball. Everyone knows the infamous stand at the OK Corral, if you will, the running out of the clock. And you know, what aggravates me about the mainstream media is, and this happened in the aftermath of it, Elizabeth Chris didn't waste any time retweeting this stuff about Alan Seaball being an obstructionist. And the reality is that never bothered with mentioning, you'll see it, in fact we're going to give a link for it, the complete unconstitutionality. It would have never survived. So here you have a gentleman who's saving ungodly amount of legal fees by running out the clock, because the bill would have been, the law would have been challenged in court. What I'm referring to is Senator J.P. Morrell's little slick maneuver to take a unrelated bill and completely replace it with a duplicate of another bill for which the subject matter was not germane, and it had multiple objects. All of that's on the video, so I'm not going to say any more. Alan Seaball deserved the hero standing that he got, but not just for making the stand, but for having the common sense intellect to point out, and Chris was sitting right there when he did it, the unconstitutionality of it. And yet, this so-called objective media, Chris not only didn't mention Alan Seaball's constitutional concerns, in the video you can see her sitting right by him. And just let it go in one ear and out the other. But then she had the unmitigated gall to retweet out Governor Edwards' statement that, well, here we have the obstructionist. No, here we have somebody that was a candidate that was in line for potential federal judgeship until he pulled himself out because of all the lengthy and rigorous stuff he had to go through. In the end, it's like the term will be over before I ever got confirmed or whatever. But clearly, he knows the Constitution, and he made that point, and yet it's like that doesn't matter. So I've got all, and if you've looked at my Facebook meme, I've still got the taxpayer hero. One person thought that was a photo of me, and said, wow, be impressive. And well, thanks, but it's Alan Seaball. So will always have a warm and special place in my heart for Alan Seaball. But in this particular situation, and I'm going to tell you why, and that's the subject matter of our post, I'm supporting Raymond Garafalo, and here's why. He's going to be placing his name in the hat, and he's going to be having a super PAC to promote himself becoming Speaker. Now, Raymond Garafalo, just like Barry Ivey, drew new opposition in their races to serve another term. But here's the deal. The vast majority of all of Garafalo's money, it's going to be his super PAC will be self-funded, okay? And that's not going to be the case for some other folk, specifically Stuart Bishop and Sherman Mack, I think are going to be planning to have super PACs. You got to admire somebody that is willing to put up their own money to work to become the next Speaker. The other thing I want to point out, going back to Senate bill, I hate to say that I harp on this, but I do, okay? Representative Garafalo voted no with regard to taking the auctioneers out. That makes him stand out, unfortunately, from Alan Seaball. At least Alan Seaball certainly did vote for the final passage of the bill, but in looking up the vote on Mascarello's amendment, unfortunately, Seaball voted yes. Garafalo voted no. So I think that Representative Garafalo has a pretty darn good understanding of the Auctioneers Licensing Board, and that means an awful lot to me. So with that, Sound Off Louisiana is making its official endorsement. Hopefully this won't kill any chance he's got, for Raymond Garafalo to be the next Speaker of the House of the state of Louisiana. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you yet another edition of Sound Off Louisiana in the near future. Thank you again.